Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Mr. Speaker, could we get some order? There's a lot of chatter.
Members, please take your conversations outside the rail.
Members, I have never much liked the idea of legislators drawing politicians' districts. And that was a feeling that was affirmed by my first experience being in this body, helping draw districts. But one of the positives was being able to advocate for my constituents, and in particular, to be able to advocate for the I-35 corridor in Hays County to stay whole, to be connected in its state house districts, its state senate districts, and its congressional district. That's important because the I-35 corridor is a distinct community that is connected to itself. People in East Austin have family in Kyle and San Marcos. And those folks have family down in San Antonio. Now, I know there's been a lot of conversation about how wonderfully compact these new maps are. But the truth is, this new map is ripping apart a performing Hispanic opportunity district, Congressional District 35, that runs up and down the I-35 corridor. It's going to take communities like Blanco Gardens and Victory Gardens, historic Hispanic communities in San Marcos, and fold them into a district that is over 60% white. It's going to take the voice of those constituents and effectively erase them, giving them no power in determining who represents them in Congress, and attaching them to counties that they have little relationship with, like Bandera, Gillespie, Kendall, Kerr. Rural counties that don't have much in common with the rapidly growing and urbanizing I-35 corridor. It's also going to take fast-growing communities like Buda and Kyle and attach them to communities on the Gulf Coast, to Matagorda County, Aransas County, Nueces. It's going to take bedroom communities of Austin like Buda and Kyle, communities where the industries are focused on tech, government, higher education, and connect them to more industrial communities that just don't share their interests. But most importantly, these maps are ripping apart Hispanic communities, and the lines don't even make sense. Travis Elementary School, part of San Marcos CISD, will be in Congressional District 27, just barely. But much of its attendance zone will be in Congressional District 21, and a little finger that stretches up between Post Road and the Blanco River. Why anyone thought that was a boundary that would make sense to the constituents of San Marcos, Texas is beyond me, but the line is confusing and arbitrary and divides up communities. It means that Blanco Gardens will be in a different congressional district than Blanco River Gardens, neighborhoods that, again, share a community, share relationships, share a grocery store, will be in different congressional districts. And members, this is particularly important because Congressional District 35 has been a performing Hispanic opportunity district. We hear a lot of promises about this new map, but you don't know performance till the map is drawn on the ground, until elections actually happen. Congressional District 35 was court-ordered to be drawn as a Hispanic opportunity district based in the I-35 corridor. And this body is about to disregard that court order and rip communities I represent apart. Remember, these maps also harm the Black community along the I-35 corridor, not just the Hispanic community. Right now, Congressional District 35 is 13.9% Black in voting age population. Now, parts of that district are going to get absorbed into Congressional District 37, Congressional District 21, and some will stay in 35. The highest black population in any of those districts is 10%. Congressional District 21 will be just 2.53%. That means our historic black communities in San Marcos that live along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard are going to have no ability to link their voices with those of other constituents who share their identity and their history in order to have an influence on the electoral outcome. This map is destroying a district that has consistently been able to elevate the voices of people of color in choosing who represents them. So members, I ask you to think about the harm that's happening, think about the districts on the ground that are being ripped apart, think about the constituents who are going to have members of Congress who have no reason to listen to them because these maps are drawn to marginalize their voices. Members, stand up for fair representation and vote no on this map.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Flores, for what purpose?
will the gentlelady yield for question?
Will the lady yield for questions?
I will.
The lady yields.
Thank you, Representative Sweaner. I understand your district, like mine, is within the current Congressional District 35. Is that correct?
Yes, about 70% of my district is in Congressional District 35.
And this is a strong Latino community and a strong Latino opportunity district, is it not?
Yeah, we have historic Hispanic communities all up and down the I-35 corridor, from Ulen to Kyle to San Marcos to East Austin, and of course down to San Antonio. And these are communities that, as I mentioned, share relationships. I was on the phone with my old chief of staff recently, who's old guard San Marcos, and he has cousins in East Austin and cousins in San Antonio.
Are you familiar with Del Valley in my District 51 in Southeast Travis County?
I'm familiar with the community, but I don't know it as well as you do.
Well, as you might be aware, I represent two school districts. Del Valley ISD is in the community of Del Valley, and that's just east of the airport. That I've been told by constituents, and our Senator Saffirini, is being called by constituents with concern that their school district is being split between two congressional districts. Their own school district is now going to be split between two different congressional districts. Are you aware of that?
I wasn't aware of the specifics of Del Valley, but we're seeing those same concerns. San Marcos CISD is going to be split between two different districts, and even the attendance zones for some elementary schools are going to be divided between two districts. It doesn't make a lick of sense.
And that community is a big Hispanic community, and those students in that school district are going to be torn apart. It's a community of interest, and they're going to be, no longer be able to share a congressional representative. Don't you find that really troubling?
I find it incredibly troubling. And I was looking over the map, using some of the tools we have to look at the population, the Hispanic population in particular in that area. And when you're east of 35, I-35 in either Travis County or Hays County, there is almost always, with a couple exceptions, a Hispanic plurality. And in most cases, a Hispanic majority. Those constituents should have the right to band together and elect the candidate of their choice, just like they can in the current Congressional District 35.
Well, thank you, Representative Sweaner, for standing up for your constituents, for standing up for my constituents that are within that congressional district. And I also join you in urging everybody to vote no against this map. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Flores. Members, the facts are clear. This map is going to rip apart performing minority opportunity districts. And the harm in my community it's going to be immense. So I urge you to vote no and keep these connected communities of interest along I-35 together in Congressional District 35. Please vote no.
Chair recognizes Ms. Garcia Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise today in strong opposition to House Bill 4. This proposal disenfranchises millions of Texans, families, communities, and neighborhoods across our state, including those I represent in House District 115, and even myself. Under this plan, congressional districts 32 and 33 are radically redrawn to deprive Texans of fair representation. District 32, my own district, is an egregious example in North Texas. It forces together suburban communities like Farmers Branch, where I live, with rural communities as far as Pittsburgh and Gilmer in East Texas. These districts are neither compact nor true communities of interest. Instead, District 32 has been carved into a 175-mile fajita strip that dilutes and disenfranchises voters. District 33 is yet another case. Today, it connects Latino communities in Dallas and Fort Worth, ensuring their voices are heard. But under this new map, it is configured to Dallas County alone. That deliberate change strips representation not only from my constituents in House District 115, but also from the people of Tarrant County. The result? Over 1 million Latinos in North Texas are left without meaningful congressional representation. Their voices are silenced. This is targeted exclusion, plain and simple, driven not by the needs of Texans, but by out-of-state political interests. It is a sad day for this chamber and for Texas when we put the whims of DC bosses above the needs of Texans who are truly suffering right now, like our families in the Hill Country, still grieving their losses and struggling to rebuild their lives, and promised by our own leadership to be put first as HB1. I was so moved by history growing up, learning about the Underground Railroad, Nazi Germany, and so many other painfully immoral times our world has experienced. Asking myself if I would have just stood by, too scared to say anything, or if I would have met the moment in recognizing that our lives, each and every one of us, 150 members, our lives, our impact can turn the tide, stop the hurt, and heal others, as well as ourselves at the same time. Today, I traded my state pen for my grandmother's pen in a reminder of how I was raised. I'm sure how so many of you were as well, to recognize our obligation to speak and fight for those who are most vulnerable, to speak up against injustice, and to have courage whenever everyone around you seems to be too scared to do what is right. Members, I implore you, my colleagues, I implore you to have courage. What we are doing today is unjust, it is un-Texan, and it is un-American. All eyes are on Texas. All eyes are on our chamber. For all of these reasons, I urge you to vote nay on House Bill 4. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, choices are at the heart of what we do. We choose what bills that we file, choose how we vote on legislation, choose what committees we want to be on. Today is a choice. We do not have to be doing this. And this is a critical moment in our history, just like my colleague just said. Recently, I went to a classroom in my district, and as an educator, going to a classroom is one of the most joyful experiences that I do as a legislator. And while I was having uplifting conversations, a part of my heart broke, because through the dialogue, I realized just how many young people are disenchanted with politics and elected officials, have very real concerns about the future of democracy, our state, and our country, are worried about the needs of their families and friends. This is what we should be focused on: their needs, their future, the leadership that they are pleading for. What they need to see is leadership that, like Representative Barbara Gervin-Hawkins said, was brave and demonstrated the utmost political courage, or leadership that has intentional and reflective choices. Leadership that is based in love, that creates policies, that is compassionate and caring so that people can thrive. Leadership that is future building. Today, We are seeing none of that. Let me be very clear. We could be the leaders the next generation needs, but instead we are doing harmful legislation that is completely opposite of the needs of the next generation. We could be a body that comes together and demonstrates political courage, intentional choices, love, future building, by saying that we will not let our maps be rigged, by saying that the maps are the blueprint for democratic engagement and they should not be corrupted. We could be that body. There are choices being made that are not leading towards that energy. Members, I know that it's been a long day, but this is for our future, for our children. I urge you to vote no.
Chair recognizes Dr. Lalani.
Mr. Speaker, members, I stand here today not just as a legislator, but as a physician and as an immigrant who came to this country more than 30 years ago. Believing in the American dream, I built life in Sugar Land, caring for seniors and families. I ran for the office for the same reason I practice medicine, to diagnose what is wrong and act so the people can heal and thrive. I will not make this about the parties and personalities. I will talk about people. In this country, the people should choose their leaders, not the leaders should choose the people. I represent House District 76, one of the most diverse, vibrant, fast-growing areas in Texas, a living snapshot of America's future. Colleagues, the map before us, its consequences will far most upon the communities of color whose growth has powered the state, yet who often see their collective voices diluted by the lines drawn far from their block. Those choices are not accidental. Members, if the authors believe these maps improve representation for the communities of color, say so plainly. Put the racial impact on record. Tell the Texans the neighborhood splits and why. If you are proud of this impact, defend it here on the floor. Our constituents deserve no less. As a doctor, I would never ignore patients' warning signs. The warning signs are all over this map. It will determine who gets the clinic, who gets the flood control, the school investment, safe streets, and who will be told again to wait in the line. Briefly to the moment where we are in, the families across Texas are still rebuilding from disaster. They are asking why this is the first priority, why these maps are being fast-tracked, while their recovery and safety are pushed to the back. You know this is not right. The people you serve also know that. On the process, the map shaped behind closed doors, influenced by interest far from the communities on those pages, will not earn public trust. Trust is built upon open, with facts, and with the willingness to hear those who are affected the most, especially the community of color, who have carried so much of Texas growth and deserve a seat on the table, not the line through their neighborhood. Members, this vote will not close the book. The story of Texas is bigger than this map. In this story that brought me here, the American dream, and that every child, every senior, and every working family has a voice and have the choice who would represent them. We honor that promise when our district reflects the communities as they actually live, pray, learn, and work together. I ask you all to vote no on HB 4 to keep the faith with the people who have sent us here. Remember, Texans of every color and creed deserve a fair representation. I respectfully ask to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cracking and packing. Cracking and packing. It's the classic Texas Republican two-step when it comes to discriminating against Black, Hispanic, and other minority Texans. You crack and pack minority neighborhoods to dilute their voices and give outsized influence to Anglo communities, even though you know full well that Texans of color accounted for 95% of our state's population growth in the last decade. Your cracking and packing two-step is evident in many parts of the state in this map. I'm going to focus now just on my home county of Tarrant County. Tarrant County is a majority minority county of more than 2 million people. Tarrant County saw extensive growth in the last decade. All, I repeat, all because of people of color. In fact, Tarrant County's white population decreased in the last decade. But you wouldn't know that in looking at this discriminatory map. As you've already heard, this map fails to create a new Latino opportunity district in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, which is a tremendous failure because there should be one. But not only do we have that failure, this map cracks heavily Black and Hispanic neighborhoods in Fort Worth out of Congressional District 33, the district they have been united in since 2012. So let me talk about how you've accomplished the cracking. Some of those neighborhoods are submerged into CD 25, which sprawls out more than 100 miles nearly to Abilene. Rural Anglo voters will now control the outcome of their congressional election, canceling their voices. The rest of those CD 33 precincts are splintered and used for parts in CD 12, once again controlled by Anglo voters in West Fort Worth and Parker counties. By the way, let me remind the House, if you've forgotten, how CD 33 came to be. In 2011, the legislature, in passing its congressional map that year, did the exact same thing that this map does. They took heavily minority neighborhoods in Tarrant County and submerged them into white-controlled districts, suburban and rural districts, until a federal court stepped in and called it what it was: intentional racial discrimination that is against the law. Now, if you've heard this before, and if you're on the House Redistricting Committee like I am, it's because Congressman Vesey explained this to you a couple of weeks ago in our hearing, but you ignored it. Now, this legislature is poised to defy that court ruling from 2011 and repeat the same discriminatory sin. So that's the cracking, or an example of it. Let's talk about the packing. So most of my majority-minority House District 101 will be packed into CD 30, a historic Dallas-based district where Black voters have elected the candidate of their choice since that district's creation in 1991. In other words, you don't need to pack more minority voters into that district unless, of course, your goal is to cynically dilute their collective voting strength. But the intentional discrimination doesn't even stop there. As Congresswoman Crockett testified in the House committee hearing a few weeks ago, you've removed key economic engines from CD 30, like Love Field in downtown Dallas. Hell, you even took her home out of her district. She told you that, but you ignored her on that too, just like you ignored the thousands of Texans who voiced their strong opposition to this corrupt process. But you say, and I heard this in the committee, surely Congressional District 30 is going to have new economic engines with all that new territory in Tarrant County. Wrong. CD 30 in Tarrant County goes right up to the campus of UT Arlington, but the university goes into CD 6. CD 30 goes right up to the General Motors plant, but not quite. It also goes into CD 6. And the Arlington Entertainment District in CD 25. You know that's not a coincidence. You know what it is. It's straight up intentional discrimination. You can falsely claim it's about partisanship, but you know that's just a smokescreen for racial discrimination. We all see it. The people of Texas see it. And now the American people see it. Texas redistricting maps have been found to violate the Voting Rights Act every decade since the 1970s. I don't know why this legislature is so hell-bent on keeping that shameful streak going. But know this, we will see you back in court very soon.
Chair recognizes Mr. Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my 6th term, and when you've been here long enough, you get to know people. We often get to talk more personally, sometimes behind committee rooms or when it's late night during budget night, and those conversations are usually a little bit more personal. We talk in ways to each other that we don't talk here, and so I thought that the approach I would take, because so much has already been said that I agree with, that I would talk to you now the way I would talk to you then, with maybe a few fewer cuss words, of course. But I have to tell you, as your colleague, as your peer, it's frustrating when it seems like no matter what we say or what I say, you always seem to know better. That is frustrating. It is demeaning. And I'll give you an example of how often that's happened since I've been here. Some of you who've been here as long as I have may remember SB 4, which was the Show Me Your Papers bill, which allowed law enforcement to essentially racially profile people and say, you look like you don't belong, show me your papers, show me that you belong here. And we tried to tell you that that singled us out. We tried to tell you what that would look like on the ground, but you knew better. And then you've got the DEI bans that focus on clubs and departments that are designed to help and guarantee the success of students of color in particular. And we tried to tell you how that felt, what it meant, what you were doing, and even then, you seemed to know better. And then we go to the library book bans, when so many of those books were written by authors of color. And we tried to tell you, look at who the authors are. Look what they're writing about. This is how it makes us feel. This is what you're doing. This is the effect. And even then, you seem to know better. Then we've got the 287G agreements, which turn local law enforcement into ICE agents. And look what's happening now. Our neighbors, our friends, our family are getting scooped off the street by masked, unidentified agents. And we tried to tell you, look what's going to happen. We are singled out. Look at how it makes us feel, and look at how it affects us. And even then, you seem to know better. And then, you didn't want Asian folks to own property. Very straightforward. And we said, you guys, look at what you're doing. Look at who you're pointing out. Look at how it makes people feel. And look at what's going to happen. And yet, even then, you seem to know better. When you tried successfully to have Confederate Heroes Day land around the same time as MLK Day, we tried to point out what it would do, how it would make people feel, what it would mean. We told you how it made us feel and who it singled out and who it would affect, and even then, you knew better. And so here we are with these maps. Tremendous population growth in Texas, especially in the black and brown communities. And the maps don't reflect that at all. And we're trying to tell you that there's something wrong there, that it's almost impossible to do that without focusing on race. And yet, you say that you know better. And now these maps are going through cities, counties, parts of town, and even neighborhoods, and drawing them away from one another, linking them up with people and places they have nothing to do with. And we are telling you, if you knew these places, if you know those people, you are singling them out, you are using race. Look at what you're doing, look at how it makes them feel, and look at what the effect is. And even today, you are telling us that you know better. And I have to tell you, one of the distinguishing factors that someone is doing something to hurt you, that someone is doing something to keep you back and to hold you back, in the most insidious and cynical way, is when they say they know better. And that's what's happening today. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Anchia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise because I've heard from the proponents of this bill, from the authors of this bill, that this is somehow about fixing census numbers, somehow exclusively about partisanship. It's about fixing unconstitutional maps. But with every pretextual explanation, oftentimes contradictory explanations, I come back to a simple premise. And I'm going to speak as the former chair of the Mexican-American Legislative Caucus, the oldest and largest Latino legislative caucus in America, and just point out that the Latino community, by any metric, by any standard that you can apply to any map, is already underrepresented in the state of Texas today. It would be hard by any measure to quarrel with that. Very, very difficult. We represent over 40% of the population of the state, was responsible for 50% of all the growth in this state, and yet you have to try really, really hard in this map to set our community back because we're already underrepresented. You have to be intentional in the face of all the growth and all the numbers and all the data. You must be intentional. You have to try really, really hard to have us enjoy less representation than we already do under this map. If you apply the numbers, this map furnishes maybe 4 or 5 districts where the Latino community can elect candidates of their choice. Okay? If you apply math to that and a percentage, that 4 or 5 out of 38 comes out to about 10.5% to about 13%. Again, even though we represented 50% of all the growth in this state and are now the largest plurality population in the state of Texas. So to only say that Latinos are going to get between 10 and 13% of the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice under this current map explains to me that you had to try really, really hard. You had to be intentional about this lack of representation. And we can go through the individual places in Tarrant County. It's been discussed where nearly 1 in 3 people is Latino, and yet this map dismantles their only chance at representation. Gone. In Dallas County, where over 1 million Latinos, and side note, more Latinos in North Texas than even South Texas, where we have waited for more than a decade to have the opportunity to elect a Dallas County neighbor of our choice, this map denies us again. In Houston, Representatives Wale, Perez, and Hernandez talked about the longstanding Latino neighborhoods that are systematically and intentionally packed and cracked, tying working class families to faraway suburbs that share nothing in common. In San Antonio, representatives have told you that a performing 60+% Latino congressional seat just disappears. It's gone. Poof. With no explanation. So this map is not democratic. It is not representative. Instead, let's just call it what it is. It is a deliberate, intentional, racial gerrymander. And the numbers don't lie. And colleagues, as has been pointed out to you over and over and over again, so much so that it must be seared into your brain, what is being attempted today is not new. What is being done to our communities today is not new, because every decade since the 1970s, this legislature, whether it was Dixiecrats or Democrats or Republicans, has discriminated against people of color. Every decade. And when we think about those people who came before us, we wonder, wow, what were they like? What were those people like who could look at the African American, Asian, Latino people on this House floor and say, you deserve less representation. I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you, you deserve less representation. And I'm going to be intentional about that. What were those people like? So just ask yourselves, and ask yourselves if you want to add your name to that list of people who looked at these communities of color, at their colleagues in the eye and said, no, you deserve less representation. Y para el pueblo que esté aquí o que está mirando en la televisión, voy a ofrecer unos comentarios en español para que todo el mundo sea incluido en este debate. Porque es claro y sabemos que la única manera que nuestra comunidad hispana va a llegar de donde estamos, bajo representados, a dónde queremos ir, es con representación. Es con representación. And if representation wasn't so important, if it wasn't so important, why are people willing to break the law and discriminate intentionally to take your representation from you? So, members, when Representative Bernal said that oftentimes this majority tells us, well, we know better than you, it is in fact the case here, where you are saying to people all over this state, no. See that congressperson that we gave you last time? That representation that you had last time? We know better today what you need. We know better today what people in Dallas or Houston or Austin or San Antonio need. We, the government, we, the politicians in Austin who have never been to your community, are going to tell you emphatically the representation you deserve today. And we're just gonna do it. And I thought about things I've spoken a lot about the Latino community, but this is really about all Texans. I love living in a Texas that is diverse, that is growing, that is vibrant, and our representation needs to reflect that. This map does not reflect that, and you have to try hard. You have to be deliberate, and you have to be intentional in your efforts not to reflect the diversity of this state. But members, it's not too late. You can vote no on this bill. You can say Texas is not going to go down this path. We are going to have a map that reflects the diversity of this state, the people of this state, the representation that people want in this state. Or you can add your names to that sullied list that has existed for decades and wonder about what those people were like. You need only look in the mirror. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for your continued patience throughout this most monumental debate. I rise today in opposition to this effort to conduct mid-decade redistricting as a proud Texan and as a proud native of South Texas in particular. South Texas in particular asked on multiple occasions to please bring live committee hearings and testimonies to the Valley so that the Valley could participate in this debate. Because as you know, to date, we are one of the most economically disenfranchised, disconnected parts of the state. So to everyone who did not get to attend, please know that we continue to fight on your behalf. And again, I stand here in line with those Texans who firmly believe across Texas and the nation that people should choose their representatives and not the other way around. And to everyone in here who states, and to everyone listening who's thinking, well, gerrymandering, this is just politics. This is pure politics. This doesn't really affect me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, politics affects everything. The air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the books that we read or do not allow others to read. It affects everything, and to say otherwise is purely privilege that we cannot take for granted. I stand here today to say if you are from South Texas, this is not about whether you are red or whether you are blue. This is about your voice and your representation. Our valley, South Texas, has unique needs to those comparable to anywhere else in the rest of the state. We're one of the only areas that has sea, land, and airports. So when you create districts in South Texas that sprawl over 200 miles, that stretch you out like string beans from the northern border of Mexico to the center of Texas, tell me, how is that fair and unique to your voice? Some of the districts that we've carved out in South Texas, for example, in CD 34, if anyone looks you in the face and says, this is good for South Texas, it is a lie. This proposed map removes over 294,000 Hispanic voices from South Texas and moves them to north of Nueces County. Again, almost 200 miles away from where you and your family live. That's a 38% reduction in Valley Hispanic voices. If anyone looks you in the face in South Texas and says that that is good for the Valley, it is a lie. And it was not made or drawn for you. The proposed map in CD 34 in South Texas reduces the number of registered voters with Hispanic surnames by nearly 15 percentage points. They are not going to look or sound like you. This plan would more than double the Anglo representation in South Texas. It would increase the Anglo voting population by 135%. They do not look, live, act, or speak like you. They do not know or understand your struggles. There is not a single restaurant, place, or even sporting event that you could go to in the Valley that is 135% Anglo. I've looked. No lo vas a encontrar. It's not there. I also rise today to address this growing myth that is being spread. And I guess the thought is, if we keep saying it enough, maybe it will become true. If we keep telling the whole world Hispanics are voting more and more red, the Valley is turning more and more red, if I say it enough, maybe it'll be true. Ladies and gentlemen, this map, this proposed map, is evidence that that is a lie. Not only is it not true, they are so afraid of how fiercely you are about to rise up that we are building walls, carving lines, and destroying communities to make sure that you don't stand up and tell the nation that that is false. I cannot stand by idly and let them continue to perpetuate this lie. Son mentiras. I will never stop being proud of being from the Valley, and I will never stop fighting for our voice. And I'm telling you right now, please, if you respect or care for the Valley, vote no on this map. And when we continue to ask, why would you vote yes? And you say, because we can. I ask you to stop, pause, and think of all of the history, horrendous and otherwise, that we've been through because of the masquerade that Mike makes right. With this great power comes great responsibility, and we know that. It is our job to exercise restraint with our power. Please consider the power of restraint that you have right now for the people of Texas, and South Texas in particular. South Texas, they are drawing these lines because they are very, very afraid of Hispanic voices. And I think they should be.
Chair recognizes Ms. Johnson.
In 1972, Barbara Jordan ran for Congress. Texas, House District 18. When I looked around my house as a little girl, there was a painting of the storytellers. It was her favorite painting that my dad had. Black men speaking to youth about their history and about their future. As I look around the room of white men, I think about my dad. And I love the head shake. And I love the nod. Because this is about racism. And if you can't hear it from them, then hear it from me. As a white woman and a daughter of a man of privilege and power, he knew that his strength was to bring people that didn't look like him to the table of government. And so 50 years later, after Barbara Jordan, aided by white people to have a voice, the first woman of color elected to the South, a woman who sat in the impeachment of Nixon, a woman who said that finally, after amendment, debate, and vote, I am finally part of we the people. To stand here as a 50-year-old woman and know that we now go back in time. So let's talk about cowardice and cheats. Because if you knew you could win this next election, you wouldn't be taking this effort to try to steal 5 seats from elected officials that members of color elected to represent them in Washington, D.C. You wouldn't be doing everything you can to take this coalition of diversity and stand up at the mic and say, why are we doing this? Because we can. And you shield your racism with your party, with ignorance and arrogance, to come up here and say, to be honest with you, I haven't read the bill from the other side. To be honest with you, I haven't talked to the lawyers to be bringing this before it. because you think that people will give you grace on ignorance and arrogance around party, because you can't admit that the root of all of this is about racism and power. A power grab. A pure power grab. And so I'm going to ask, don't shake your head, because I'm going to give you a moment to prove what you mean behind that. Because when Donald Trump called Georgia Republicans and said, hey, boys, I need you to steal me almost 12,000 votes. To those men credit, they said, no, sir. We already know what Governor Abbott said. In a few minutes, we're going to find out what y'all say. Vote no on this bill.
Chair recognizes Mr. Martinez Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, a lot has been said, and I think it's important that we reflect on it, and I'll try not to repeat it. But there are some things that you really need to know, and I think you already know this. Redistricting is a very hands-on process. You think about your own legislative experience and the idea that somebody would hand you a bill, tell you to file it and pass it, and not read it, not lay it out, not change it, not amend it, not let it come back in conference and negotiate it. But yet, on this congressional map, that's exactly what's happening here. And you may be okay with that, but I know that when this leaves the legislative chamber and leaves the executive mansion, it goes to a federal court. And I've said it all the time that we are all equal in federal court. And they're going to want to know about these procedures and these deviations from procedure and all of the things that have been done through acts or omissions. And I hope you have the answers, because I don't understand how we can have a map that eliminates 2 minority opportunity districts in Bexar County, and we have 2 members from Bexar County on the redistricting committee, but we couldn't have a public hearing in Bexar County, which is a lot closer to get to than Harris or Dallas County. That's a flag. I've never seen a redistricting process where there was a lawyer appointed to represent only the views of the chairman and not the committee. I've been here long enough to see that happen before. That dog didn't hunt very well. Chair Darby will tell you about that. When he tried to represent that the lawyer for the redistricting committee only spoke to the chairman, both sides threw the lawyers out and almost the chairman. And we could not resume again until both sides had their own counsel so they could work through this process. That didn't happen here. I know there are court records and there are discovery items from past redistricting that really gets into people's thoughts, gets into their emails, gets into their personal emails, their text messages, those Gmail accounts. And I think what's happening here is because of those lessons, we have now removed this redistricting process from outside of this building, take it somewhere else, let this map be drawn, dropped into the committee, maybe a tweak or 2, perfecting amendments, and then brought to this floor where it's not going to be debated. And the first real question you ask, the answer is I don't know. All I know, my intent is to create 5 new seats. Political performance is legal. Yes, it is, but it's not legal on the backs of the minority community. And those are the answers we have tried to get. But you can't hide all your intentions with the words political performance. You cannot say that this map is race blind and only reflects political performance, but you have 400 144 precinct cuts. Exactly that many, because there's a 370 report that will tell you that if you've been through voting rights and voting rights litigation, you can run a report that'll tell you that there are 444 precinct cuts. That is not an accident. That is not a drafting error. That is a mission. That is a laser focus on drawing maps and redesigning precincts in the process to get to your mathematical outcome. No answers here. We are told that the chairman told the lawyers to follow the law, but then he asked you to table amendments saying that we would honor Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We will follow Jingles, which is U.S. Supreme Court case law. Told you we don't need those. We've told you, hey, if this outcome is very, very reminiscent of other things we've tried to do, courts will set this aside. Let's just revert to the current map. No, we're not going to do that either. I don't know how we can be so confident in our legislative work. Before we started the day, we were told that a court just set aside the 10 Commandment monument that was just passed in the regular session. So you tell me that the hearings are transparent, that our